All right, last call for folks to find their seats. We're going to get started. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners in Elko with feeds to Reno and Las Vegas. We recessed on item 18, Nevada Department of Wildlife License Simplification Strategy Update. Director Tony Wasley and Lauren Chase of Chase & Chase Consulting for possible action. We heard the presentations, and I very much appreciate the update and all the information. Like I said, I needed to take a short break just to get my thoughts together a little bit. But Mr. Chase, if you'd come up to the podium, I think what we'll do is open it up to commissioner questions or initial comments. This is a possible action item. Director Wasley, I would ask at some point if you're looking for any specific action for us or not. And then as it's open, or as it's an action item, we'll open it up to county advisory boards and the public. So initially, questions from the commission for Mr. Chase? Commissioner Young?
Should we make a comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a brief conversation with Dr. Chase here, and I really loved your presentation and think that there's a huge opportunity for handout if we'll listen to some of the data that you presented and some of the ideas. In particular, I always kid Jeremy where the hunting and fishing sportsmen really live, and they all live in Clark County, as he pointed out. I'm kind of saying that facetiously because I understand the dynamic of the state, but I think we as a commission need to mine that opportunity a little more than we are right now. And certainly this is a lot of fun for me to come from Las Vegas and get out of that hellhole once in a while, and I get with some real people and some nice people and some rural people. Get back to my roots. However, if we don't do that and get with it down there and start using Clark County's strength in numbers and getting in the minds of the politicians and the youth, I don't think that we're going to survive as hunters and fishermen in this state forever. I think it's in all of our best interests, particularly the hunter and fishermen in rural Nevada, to accept the fact that the population base in this state has flipped. When I was born in Arrington in 1956, Reno was bigger than Las Vegas. They're not even close anymore. And Vegas is growing, as he said, like a weed. We got NHL hockey this week. We're going to have an NFL football stadium built there, I predict soon, by people I work for. And it's mind-blowing, the growth there. But the problem is the growth is kind of transient. It's some of it's not so good, and it creates a huge problem for the community because of the crime. There's a real opportunity in wildlife to use and leverage some of the ideas that Dr. Chase just spoke about to get to the youth that are creating problems in the future. I'll give you a quick example. I was telling him about years ago, a lot of years ago, I used to be the lieutenant in charge of the aviation and search and rescue component of Metro PD. Best job I ever had, flying helicopters and rescuing people, but I was out in the outdoors all the time. And we had a search and rescue team of some really sharp officers, as well as a 30-member volunteer group that knew how to climb, medical people. There's 7,900 square miles in Clark County. There's a lot of people who get hung up, screwed up, lost, get themselves in situations. It's a very active search and rescue team. We created a little program of going down to the juvenile detention center within our little unit and getting permission from the juvie judge to start a little overnight introduction to camping program for minority youth primarily, or youth in the detention facility. Kids headed in the wrong way. Now, I live at a place called Red Rock Country Club. If you're familiar with Clark County or Las Vegas in particular, on the west end, there's some mountains. And literally from my home, 10 minutes you can be at a campsite in Willow Springs that is one of the most beautiful spots in the state of Nevada. And I've been to every spot in the state of Nevada. It's really beautiful. 10 minutes. Most of these kids did not know that even existed, and they were born and raised in Las Vegas. They didn't even know we had mountains out there. They didn't know what a fishing pool really looked like or felt like. They didn't know how to rappel. They didn't know what the term meant. They didn't know that you could hike up there and have some fun sliding down a road. We had a biologist come and explain the different flowers and fauna that was right in the area. And these kids' attention to that was amazing. It just blew my mind. And to me, it's those kind of things that are the answer for a lot of problems we have as a commission, is getting to that youth. And if I was the head of NDOW, I would really, really think about that kind of program. I've talked to Tyler a little bit about it, maybe a Metro PD and NDOW's law enforcement component doing something like that again. It'd be invaluable for what he's talking about, creating knowledge and future hunters and fishermen, because that program of camping could be expanded to a variety of things. And teaching kids the right way to do things, what a gun's really used for, would be a hell of a good thing. Right now what they think it's used for, or what you do with it, is you figure out how to make a secret compartment in your car to hide one, or two, or three. Or do you have 10 pictures on the wall of other, gang members, with displaying their guns and their jewelry and their diamonds in their teeth and the money stacked there and the dope on the other side. That's what they think a gun's for. Let's teach them what they don't even have a clue what we do here at NDOW. But it's such a huge part of our population. And we better realize that that's our future. So commentary on my part as a cop for all these years and semi-amateur social scientist, I really appreciated your presentation, and I will definitely, as my position allows, use some of those ideas and push for it. So thank you very much, Dr. Chess.
Okay. Additional comments or questions? Commissioner McNinch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I've had the opportunity to hear Dr. Chase talk on a number of things. That I come in here and I try to summarize some of that, some of the human dimension work that I've heard you talk about. One of those things, and I see an intangible that's really important here. Up on one of your slides, it talked about that there's a general appreciation for NDOW. And that really bucks the trend for a very urbanized state. Being urbanized, one of the most urbanized states, there's a level of distrust that continues to build. If I remember one of your presentations right, the more urban, the more distrust there is from the public, probably mostly due to maybe some ignorance or lack of interest or whatever the case might be. So I see that we're in a decent place to begin with for a very urbanized state, and by simplifying and by concentrating on the transparency and focusing on some of those things and making things a little more simple, you kind of reinforce that thought process, and maybe, just maybe, we avoid what happens to very urbanized states in some way. And so I appreciate that direction. I'm confident that the department is all over this. There's a lot of benefits to the agency too. I know that Arizona went through it, and there seems to be some very good success going from this really complicated structure to a more simplified structure. And I'm confident that it's going to go there. As far as the numbers go, I'm one of those people that, I'm one of those people I don't worry about too much. It's just cost of doing business to me, so I don't worry a whole lot about the cost. It might temper my excitement on occasion, but for the most part, it's not going to stop me from doing the things that I do. And I don't think that these will, sportsmen and anglers, I don't think that it's, I think that there's going to be a lot of buy-in along the way. And so I appreciate the process. I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out where those numbers are, but I think it'll come out right. And I think it's a really, really positive step in a very good direction. So.
Additional comments or questions? Commissioner Valentine?
The only comment I've got is simple is good. And I know when I put in my applications every year and buy my hunting license and fishing license, combination license, we got to put in for the Colorado River stamp, the trout stamp, the upland game stamp. If we could just eliminate that, go with one fee overall, I think that's a wonderful idea. The other thing I'd like to know is, Are we looking at legislation changes this year, or there's a lot of work to be done?
Yes, there is.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. That was a very good presentation.
Commissioner Johnston?
I just thank you for the presentation. Some of the key takeaways, I think, was barriers to entry. You know, the notion that it's a complex set of regulations and not knowing what you need to do what, and people get nervous about that, obviously, because you can get in trouble and do something without the appropriate licenses and stamps. And I think that's an important issue to address, but I think also it's an overall better customer experience. It seems that the people who responded want a more simplified process. The comment that, you know, the hunting license is like buying a truck without tires, I mean, really stuck with me, because you think about it. You get your Nevada hunting license, what can you do with that hunting license and that hunting license only? And I was thinking, you can't do anything, because you gotta have a big game tag.
Hunt rabbits.
You gotta have upland stamp, waterfowl stamp, different things like that. So I also think that given when the fees were set in place, you know, it's an opportunity to take a look at that. Certainly, those of us who run businesses and that, we know the cost of running a business is not going down. It goes up every day, and it's the same thing. The cost of the department doing its business goes up. We have to try to look at that fee structure, I think, to keep up with that increase. I know, I'm sensitive to that, but when you look at the comparison of the states and the fees and that thing, it's going to be time to look at adjustment to the fee structure, potential increases.
Okay. Before I ask for the next comment, just a reminder for the audience on the video especially, the silver microphone, this one in front of me, and that one feed into the video. So if we could just speak up a little bit on volume and make sure we're relatively close to one of those microphones, it'll help the people on the video feed. Additional questions or comments from the commission? I guess I just had a couple points. Again, thanks to everyone for the presentation. There's a tremendous amount of work that went into the slideshow, and like I said, it was a tremendous amount for us to digest. But I really support the process. I like NDOW's efforts to reach out both in staff and with the private contractor and really try to reach a broad cross-section geography and also demographically. I like the interface with our commission and our county advisory board process. And so my personal hope going forward is that I would support the public workshops that are scheduled. I would like an opportunity to put it on the agenda for August so we can get that feedback and an update on the process and everything else. And so the public and the county engaged here also has that opportunity. And I don't think it dilutes this process, and I don't think it marginalizes the county advisory boards to have those parallel workshops so long as we have and maintain that cross-pollination. So again, I appreciate everyone's hard work to this point and support the process going forward. I did have one specific question for probably Mr. Chase. And one of the things that came up at the county advisory board meeting that I attended prior to this meeting was the concept of the lifetime license, and if that's something you explored in some of your background work here, or if there was some reason maybe you didn't explore that because of experiences in other states.
In the, Mr. Chair, in the comparative analysis, we did not look at that. In the quantitative analysis, we did not look at that. In the qualitative analysis, it did come up spontaneously, meaning that the topic was not on our focus group discussion guide, but it did come up as we were talking about multi-years, things like that. So, unfortunately, I don't have any data for you to talk about lifetime licenses.
Okay. Additional questions or comments before we go out to public? Director Wasley, maybe just a question to you. Is there any specific direction that you were looking for today going forward outside of maybe what's already been said?
Thank you, Chairman Drew. I guess there were maybe two objectives today. One was to expose the commission and interested publics to some of these concepts early. And if there is a direction, if there are some considerations that have been put forth that are definitely counter to the direction the Commission would like to see the department go. We'd like to hear about that. Our hope is that we're well within the guardrails, within the sideboards of the Commission, and we want to be as transparent as possible as we go through this process. So we wanted to communicate with you all and hear from you if you perceive us to be stepping outside of the sideboards that you would set for us.
Okay. Any comments from the Commission having heard that? I guess my gut feel is the recommendations that Mr. Chase made today, I don't think I have an initial knee-jerk, we can't even think about that reaction, so I don't have a problem moving forward with considering those. But let me know if I'm outside of the realm of reality here. Commissioner Young?
Thanks, Commissioner. Tony, in those sideboards, do you see any, what are the biggest challenges for you and the agency from having a bigger footprint in Southern Nevada and working on some things that would, for example, fishing in Southern Nevada? We've talked before, it's gone way, way down. We've lost a lot of businesses and so on and so forth. A lot of that's more from the drought than anything else, but you got just a brief comment on the challenges and what we need to do to get a bigger footprint down there.
Good question, Mr. Young. I guess when I hear you express your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns, there's a couple things that come to mind. One is that we could possibly do a better job of telling our story, making the Commission and the public at large aware of the efforts that we undertake. And so just recently we had Free Fishing Day. We heard about that yesterday in the Department Activity Report. And so there are a number of activities that occur already. And you spoke to the challenges of the drought. Certainly that's presented some challenges in being the driest state in the Union, and then having an extreme drought for 4 years just complicates access to fishable waters. But I think that what I sense nationally and regionally is an enhanced appreciation of education, engagement, whether it be with youth or adults. And so both with state agencies, with federal agencies, there seems to be a heightened awareness of the value of that engagement. And it isn't exclusive to what we can consider our traditional consumptive, directly consumptive users, but the public at large. And probably our biggest challenge is just capacity. Staff, when we look at where the agency is today, although we have more full-time employees than we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the growth that we've experienced doesn't compare to the growth that our sister agencies in other states have experienced. I recently was talking to the director of another western state who was talking about when he first started in that state, they had roughly 200 employees, and now they were at 750. We have a custom and culture of duct tape and baling wire as an agency. We have trailers that we haul animals in that are literally fall apart, and there is there's been badge of honor per se in being frugal like that historically, and I think it kind of drives my mentality and how we're approaching this effort and saying this is not a fee increase. It's not a fee increase because I'm really sensitive to the notion of, oh, hey, let's just dive into the pocket of sportsmen and women because we want to do more. I think it's incumbent upon us as an agency to be as efficient as possible before we expect people to pay more. But that said, we still have a significant challenge of capacity. As Division Administrator Wakeling points out, this agency is one deep in a whole lot of areas. So if that one person is on vacation or on leave, we feel it immediately, and more so than any other wildlife agency, certainly in the West. We are an extremely small agency. We pride ourselves in being frugal. However, it comes with some significant challenges. And right now, we talk about the implementation of the land use plan amendment for sage grouse. we look at all the initiatives and federal dollars that are going to the interior agencies, Fish and Wildlife Service and BLM, and I jokingly refer to it as the acronym of the week. There are there are initiatives that come out weekly, if not daily, with the expectation that the State Wildlife Agency participate in those efforts. And we simply don't have the capacity in the Department Activity Report. Since we've been doing the seasonal habitat delineations for sage grouse, we've had 122 requests to do seasonal habitat delineations in association with projects out on the landscape. So we have roughly 250-ish employees, and 20 years ago we had 210. So that's a little bit of growth, but you know, we are an agency that some legislators love to hate. We continually face challenges during the session. We face challenges with our culture, even within our own agency, of creating positions. And it's interesting to hear that some of what Dr. Chase heard from the public is they support field positions. We support that as well, that there are political challenges and logistic challenges to getting that kind of capacity in place to be able to reach out to people and broaden that base, broaden the tent.
One way I was thinking of maybe enlarging that footprint more easily, and I don't know, Dr. Jason and I talked about it, how much of a role do we have in creating urban ponds in, say, Clark County? I'm really only aware of Sunset and Lorenzi Park, and I don't know exactly how much activity Endow has there. I believe there's a fishing license required by an adult, but not by a kid there. And it would seem to me with this drought issue that the best way to tackle the fishing problem at this point, unfortunately, is to build more urban ponds in the urban area and get more youth exposed to, fishing, whether it be fly fishing or, angling in any way, shape, or form. And proximity to their neighborhoods and ease of getting there would start creating some of these mindsets and some of these youth thinking about hunting and fishing earlier in life. But like I said, I'm only aware of those 2 ponds, and can we help? Is there something we can do? And do you believe in those things?
We do definitely believe in it. I mean, we're actively engaged. We believe that that's a great gateway. For some, it's not only a gateway, it may be the end point for some. Some people may never leave town, but
I'm getting to that age. That's almost my fishing spot, yeah.
Currently developing one in Winnemucca. We've got some in Carson, we've got some in Reno, we have some in Vegas. But we're also, again, capacity-wise, we went out to Jigs Reservoir yesterday and looked at a project out there that took 9 years to bring to fruition. We saw a presentation on Cummins Lake, and we saw that we had over 60 staff involved and $250,000 of effort to bring back that economically viable, recreationally important fishery to that community. And so, there's a balancing act there of taking care of the native fishes, taking care of those candidate listed species, taking care of an urban fishery. And I don't know if Division Administrator Schoberg has anything that he would like to add relative to the urban fisheries development or program in the South, but certainly if he has anything to add.
One thing I would say on that, just in the interest of time and staying within the bounds of our agenda item, is that might be a really good presentation to have when we're in Vegas next. Commissioner Young, is that something I assume you'd support?
I think so, Chairman.
Because I think it'd be timely, and obviously it's geographically important. So, additional comments, Commissioner Johnston?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the one final comment is, we currently have a system where we end up with specific buckets of money from the waterfowl stamp, the upland stamp. If we were going to go to the simplification process, we would probably not have those dedicated buckets of money, which I think simplifies some of the issues that face this commission. You have a meritorious project, and there's too much argument, not over the merits of the project, but whether it fits in the appropriate funding bucket. But I certainly would not want to see a situation where simplification of licensing that gets us away from annual plans related to waterfowl or upland birds and things like that. So because if we talk about simplification, we are going to change might be one big bucket rather than some of these buckets. And I don't want to get away from, and we just had it yesterday, specific projects for waterfowl upland and how we address that through the legislative process if it was to move forward in the future.
Mr. Chase, I think Arizona dealt with that a little bit on their simplification. I don't know if you're familiar enough to be able to speak to that, or maybe how they approached it, or Director Wasley, if you had some concepts. But
Yeah, in this case, I would defer to Director Wasley on that.
So it's a really good point that we've considered. So the enabling legislation for each of those creates a restricted reserve that can only be spent according to statute. And we've talked about if we did away with the stamp, how would we know how many people bought an upland game stamp, and how would we earmark those funds specific to those projects? And as you'll recall with many of the projects that you've seen, whether they come from a $3 fee, whether they come from the upland game stamp or the state duck stamp, there's been some blurring of the lines, not with respect to where the money comes from, but with respect to you have a project that could be eligible for funds from several different restricted reserve accounts. There are benefits that go across the landscape that affect multiple species. And so what we've talked about is we could look at proportionally, you can look at all the revenue associated with those, look at proportionally what that's been through time, kind of develop a running average and start at that point with building those budgets specific to those programs, still have those plans and those projects that would still be tied to those, but it wouldn't be defined in statute, and it wouldn't be associated with that stamp. So there would be more flexibility for the department and commission. The key, I think, would be to remain equally or more transparent, and that's what we heard from the public as well, is they wanted to know where the money was being spent. And so we wouldn't create a scenario where all of a sudden everything's bundled up and we have one large pot of money, and because we like Sean more than Russell, we're going to go spend it all on sage grouse, or vice versa. And that would be a transparent process. We would still have that planning and reporting. You didn't hear me, did you, Russell?
additional questions?
I guess we're looking at overall fee simplification and that. Does that mean in the endeavor in this process, we're going to look at the predator management fee as well, or does that stay out of it as a separate and distinct fee?
My intent at this point would be to leave that alone and let that be a separate and distinct fee. I wouldn't want that to jeopardize the success. Given the political sensitivities around that, I wouldn't want that to jeopardize the success of this effort.
Understood.
Additional questions or comments at this point? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up. County Advisory Board input on item 18, NDOT license simplification strategy update. Thank you, Mr. Chase.
For the record, Paul Dixon Clark. We had just a little kind of 2-page flyer background that Suzanne sent us, and we did a little bit of discussion in Clark Cab on that. And I think overall there's general agreement without details we heard here today of looking at simplification of the license. And it kind of mirrored the information that we saw presented here in the thought pattern and discussions. And something I'd like to ask the Commission, and it applies to the Department of Wildlife, scheduled meetings coming into things. When you look at Clark County, and you call for a meeting and to do things, one of the most effective ways that I've seen to get out to people is if we had a little bit of, if we got a little blurb in one of their, news segments or something where we could get out there on the TV to people to say we're going to have this, and you would get the interested public in there. Because it's big and there's a lot of stuff going on, it's very hard when you post things on walls or you stick things to actually get people's attention. And we have to think a little bit differently at Clark of how we capture the attention of getting people in a representative cross-section of people to attend in Clark County. And I think it's important. One of the ways may be is trying to get some of the NGOs down there to, whether it's their sportsmen or whether it's trail riders or whatever it is, Retrievers Club, get those guys notification and say, please get out to your members and try to spread that. So you get a good cross-section of the people that are actively involved in the sporting world down there, whether it's consumptive or non-consumptive. There's bird watchers groups down there, everything else. Try to get those NGOs involved so you get that cross-section when you have your meeting. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the same 15 people sitting in the room that you always have, and you're going to get probably the same 15 people's worth of views, and I don't think that's going to be as valuable to you. That's the first comment I have on that. Second thing would be is that you made a comment with a little tassel in licenses. I do not buy my license online because I don't want a big piece of paper. I actually go to one of the distributors, one of the over-the-counter guys, so I can get the little thing. And so from my perspective, being able to get that, where you didn't have to go, and I didn't have to drive out to Bass Pro Shops or the Sportsman's Warehouse to get that, but I could grab it, pay for it online, and just have it mailed to me, and I'd pay the fee. Lastly, thinking about fees, if you go with a combination fee and things are raised, you kind of have a slightly higher price to be, doesn't have to be revenue neutral, but you're going to have a combination, you're going to put things together, give a discount for buying that combination. I would suggest the revenue neutral or offset of that increase there, besides those things, is really looking at not changing the tag fee structure, because in my viewpoint, where you're going to lose people is when they're buying tags. People are very sensitive to tags. If you give them a combination license, it allows them a lot of things to do, but you kind of keep the tags pretty much where they are in space, and we've been living with that unless there's a problem. I think you're going to lose less people applying for multiple tags. With that, I think one last thing is that you were asking Bill about how to get people involved in Vegas. The other thing is we've had a very successful archery program in the schools, and I don't see how much that archery program translates into hunting or getting people converted who do archery into hunting. And Mike Reese and the other groups have started basically a varsity program or a letter program at the schools with trap shooting. And that's taken off, and we're doing stuff. And again, I'm not sure how we're interfacing with those school kids in those events and bringing them into the sporting community of hunting. And that may be an opportunity for us to be looking at. Thank you.
Additional cab input? Gil, come on up.
For the record, Gil Yannick, Carson Advisory Board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great presentation, a lot of information, and it would really be wonderful if we could get a PowerPoint or a PDF or something that we could show at the meetings, and we'd advertise it, and surely we'd get a lot of hunters and fisher persons to come down and see what may be in the future. Simplification is a great word. Everybody's in favor of simplification, but it still does not eliminate the need to know the regulations. I mean, you have to know what the fishing limits are of the different locations, when the season starts in certain places and stops in others. So, you know, they still have a responsibility on the part of the user, whether it's the hunter or the fisherman. There's some good reasons to go down to the local fishing store or hunting supply store because, one, you can pick up the latest regulations. It's a nice place to have it there because they get all the copies directly from NDAL, and the person doesn't have to come down to a regional office to pick them up. Store owners like to have the people come down and pick up the regulations, buy their licenses there, because while they're there, they're going to buy something. They're going to see something they don't have or they need more of. So, you know, trying to totally eliminate this buying it over the counter has some negative connotations associated with it because people want to go there anyway. And the stores that supply a lot of this information as a convenience for the department to the public want those people, want the traffic. They want the foot traffic in the store because while they're there, they're going to buy a lot of different things. Something to keep in mind. That's about most of my comments, and I'm sure that after we show it to the public, and we'll get some comments that, you know, they thought about that we didn't, and maybe Dr. Chase didn't, but I'm sure we'll find some answers and hopefully go forward with all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Additional county input? Okay, seeing none. Public comment in Las Vegas on item 18, license simplification.
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, how about Reno?
We have comment in Reno, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Karen Talo. I'm a Washoe County resident. And I wanted to thank the department for having such a wonderful presentation. I do have some concerns about the use of the term "the public." It seems like it's been used differently by different people who've been speaking this morning. If I was part of the 2% of consumptive users, I would think this was actually an excellent study, but I'm not. I'm part of the 98%, and I would very much like to be included in some of this research. I believe that there could be some confounding variables related to this research if you do decide to include the 98% of us who are non-consumptive users in this research. It might be better if we had a little bit more of a neutral person who was doing the research with us, someone who was not necessarily part of the consumptive community. I do support what Paul Dixon was saying from the Clark County CAB about including the general public in some of the community meetings. The one in Reno, I believe, is July 18th. I also have a lot of questions related to this. When he was talking about, when Dr. Chase was talking about the hunting community, was he including trappers also in that? One other thing related to what Director Wasley was saying about involving non-consumptive users, the Department of Wildlife has been working with the Great Basin Outdoor School, which is founded and run by one of my best friends of the last 30 years, Susie Jaycox, and I really appreciate Department of Wildlife working with her and her school to educate young people on the importance of wildlife. Thank you.
Okay. Additional public comment, Reno, on item 18.
Yes, for the record, Fred Volz. I'm very concerned by this study. The operational considerations of supposed license simplification seem to have morphed into how to sell more killing licenses to a diminishing base of prospects. That's troubling. Second, as Ms. Taylor said, customers are all the residents of the state, not just a statistically small number of people who happen to buy killing licenses. Next, I would say that this is a comparable study to the one that was done about the deer hunters on a feel-good type approach where we spent $50,000 of public money. Next concern is about the valuation of the killed wildlife. Where is it? There is no severance fee paid to the public treasury for the permanent destruction and loss of a public asset in any of the proposed fee changes. Next, the general populace doesn't know that NDOW even exists, or the commission, or the CABs. You could ask any number of people, and you would find probably 70 to 80% of the population of the state doesn't have a clue that you're around or anything that you do. And finally, in response to Commissioner Young's comment about the disadvantaged youth and getting more of them involved in this process, I would posit the question, is it better for those youth to harm wildlife or people? And encouraging them to kill wildlife does not give them better values going forward or improve their lot in life. Thank you.
Next public comment, Reno.
Okay. No more comment in Reno. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. We have one more.
Yes, thank you. Bobby McCollum in Reno. I also noted that in his presentation, Mr. Chase said the hunters represent 2% the population and the numbers are declining. Yet most of the comments after the presentation related only to hunting and fishing. I hope that this commission will recognize the desires of the majority of Nevadans, 98% of us. Thank you.
Anything else from Reno? Seeing none, public comment in Elko. Okay. Anything further from the commission?
Yes.
We're not going to get into tit for tat.
Mr. Volz, that's not what I said about values. I don't know if you were paying attention or not. I was talking about camping, and I'll disagree with you strongly about wildlife, hunting and sports people, and those values are not anywhere equated to the values that are causing the death of people related to crime. I'll take you on that any day. You don't have any experience on it. I get tired of you telling me what I said. I'll stand by my word that teaching kids and youth, particularly kids that have been at a disadvantaged, fatherless home, about what sportsmen do the right way will make them a better human being in the future. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the commission? I believe the department probably has the direction it needs or the input it needs, unless there's something I'm missing. Okay. Again, thank you to everyone for the presentation and the discussion and the inputs. There will be more to come on this. So with that, we'll close item 18.